Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Life Edge. Because life just doesn't have to be mediocre. And someone who is not mediocre is right next to me right now. And she is the doctor. She's in the house. It's Dr. Susan Nash. Hey, Susan, how are you?
I'm great. And like the music.
Yeah, we got some new music. We're cranking. Soon we'll be taking phone calls from ill people who need help. Here's our intro. That was fast. And we are back. So, Susan, today it's you and me. And a very famous Mexican star. And you may wonder, why are we highlighting a very famous Mexican star? So, Susan, tell me, what's one of the things that gave you an edge in life?
Cantinflas, without a doubt.
Cantinflas. Tell us about who is Cantinflas.
Well, Cantinflas is an amazing presence in Mexican cinema. And he started in the carpas. Those are the tent shows, sort of sideshow, carnival type things. And he perfected a few. This is back in the 30s, and he started perfecting a few acts.
Well, he was born in 1911, I think.
Yeah, that's right, in Mexico City. And he had 13 or 14 brothers. He was in the middle. And his father was a postmaster or something like that, or a postman. And anyway, he had a really interesting childhood, but he decided to sort of get into all sorts of things. He tried boxing. He was in the army for a while. He did the tent shows, and then he just became really brilliant at creating a character that's named Cantinflas, who was what they called a pelado, which just kind of like a riffraffy type, but he was proud of being riffraffy, and I mean it's almost like redneck, but not redneck, and at a time when there was still a lot of snobbery and then also the Mexican Revolution had just happened, and there were still different kinds of revolutions going on here and there, and he just completely affirmed. Well, I just feel like he was completely postmodern in a modernist context.
Now he was a dancer, a singer, a comedian, an actor, screenwriter. He did a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
Now he died, I think, early 1990s.
Yes, yes, and he had emphysema. And it was really a tragic death. He was really, really generous at the end of his life and funded a lot of educational programs. I think the two things that make him most memorable, at least to Mexicans, is the first part of it, he was really comedic and he affirmed the little guy. He's always for the little guy. The little guy always came out ahead. And he lampooned politicians. So you would always have these thieves and politicians, and they were indistinguishable from each other.
Sounds familiar, actually.
It's a guy for today.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every American would really like his work. Now, the second half of his work, at least from my perspective, and of course, you're talking about a North American. I mean, I'm not Mexican, and I don't really know that much. I haven't immersed myself in Mexican culture, so I'm missing a lot. So I'm looking at the perspective from the North American. But for me, what's super interesting about him as well is that he really, toward the end, was subverting certain institutions as well. But he was talking about how useless regular education is in terms of conventional, and that you can learn on your own and be very, very adept and filled with human dignity, etc.
Now that's interesting. Now you're a professor. You work as a
Yeah,
professor, or have worked. You still work as a professor.
yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because there's always a lot of comments and questions about. Now I'm one of those who thinks we should tear down the whole college system and rebuild it, and make it more of a trade school, so people actually come out with skill sets. And then if you want to
Well,
learn other things, you should go to a different kind of college.
well, okay. Cantinflas was very, very respectful of teachers.
Mm,
Profe, we call him profe, and he really wanted to learn to read, etc. But this was in a time when it wasn't free, so a
right.
lot of people were illiterate, and so I think that the basic skills kind of of um, education are very undervalued, and teachers and writing, there should be a thirst for learning, and I do see that. I see a thirst for learning to
Hmm.
write effectively, especially with adults who are coming back to school. They have a real thirst to
Sure.
be able to write effectively.
But
And yeah,
but I don't think that's the issue. I think it's in elementary school, you learn a certain amount of skill sets, your basics, the fundamentals. Then you get into high school, and then you repeat high school pretty much all over again in college. You have to take all the same courses for no real reason rather than focus on your career. And we're the only country that does that, where you take high school all over again in college and you major a little bit in what you're doing, but not that much. So now we move that into a master's. And so we've wasted almost 8 years for nothing. That's just my opinion, but I think it's torturous.
um, I don't know about that because I think I see Gen Ed as important in terms of learning to think, and I also look at the adult learner versus the teenager, and I think if you apply things in a different way, it's actually equipment for living. But I do think that the basic skills class and the general education need to be anchored in problem solving.
But don't you think that in high school they should be doing that? Because in most countries, including Mexico, for example, when you graduate from high school, you have a bachiller, which is a bachelor's degree. And it's very equivalent to our bachelor's. And they major in certain things like sciences or tech or accounting or finance, art. And then the ones who do go to college focus on, let's say, engineering. Let's say they want to. I'll give you an example. You're a geologist. I have a friend who was a geologist in Argentina. When he graduated high school, he had taken all his science requirements to get into the university as a geology major, and he focused for, I think it was 4 years, and got his immediate degree, which is kind of between our bachelor's and a master's. And there was no redundancy. You didn't have to take reading and comprehension again. You technically had it. History, you had that. And so that's what I'm saying, is that they focused on the career.
Yeah, I'm against that
Okay.
because we have so many changes in our career paths. So, for example, I graduated with a geology degree. I
Hmm.
started out in chemical engineering, and I graduated with only 3 hours of English, and I had sort of a minor in business.
Hmm.
Well, thankfully, I took a lot of extra courses and all sorts of things because when I got out, I started as a geologist, and then there was a collapse in the industry, and it gave me like the opportunity to diversify. But if I had not had a good foundation of math and social sciences and business and humanities, it would not have been it would not have been possible for me to um, go forward and work on first a master's in economics, and then I switched over and got a master's in English, and then finally I have a PhD in English, and then I did certification in instructional design. So having a very, very broad background and also a lot of curiosity about things.
Well, yeah, you were kind of one of the permanent student types to get all the degrees like that, because some people do that, but most don't.
I don't. I see there again. I take issue with you. I think that a lot of people are doing lifelong learning, like I was. I was working and taking classes.
Right. Which is good.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't realize your PhD. See, that's how little I know about you. She leads a very secret life. I didn't realize you had your PhD in English.
Yeah.
I thought it was in geology.
Now, hence my interest in Cantinflas and film theory and postmodernism and modernism and.
Interesting. Well, I was wondering. I thought that was just. I thought that was just one of your passions and interests, but I didn't realize. I figured you got tired of rocks and went off to other activities. So I've learned something today.
Well, I kept my hand in the oil industry.
Yes.
But not enough to be like dragged down. And then I worked for Kerr-McGee Chemical, or Kerr-McGee, and then I got into the chemical. So I was an international operations analyst while I was diversifying out of geology. So I used my geology and my business. They came together. And in the meantime, I just liked discourses of explanation. And to me, economics and writing and discourse analysis, et cetera, are just perfect.
So it's an interesting conversation in your head because part of you is an economist. So when the geology says, we should dig here, you say, I think that'll cost too much. And when they say, well, what about this? No, you need to rewrite your proposal because it's not grammatically correct. That's the English person coming out.
I'm not a grammar closet. English is about analysis and looking at patterns and understanding and applying philosophical concepts.
So how did you get into, what made you go into the instructional design part of it?
Well, I've always enjoyed computers and design and always liked the internet. And I was teaching, I was finishing up my PhD and I was a graduate student and I was incorporating web design in some of that. And then I had students who couldn't attend because they were on like track team or basketball team. So I thought, well, okay, I'll just put a companion website. And then I started incorporating little different things. And this was right before the .com collapse. So all these things were like kind of possible. Or you try to do lots of videos and plugins and lots of audio. And I created a lot of my own objects and then just it worked out. And so that was sort of a nascent form. It was super simple. And then I just started taking the theory, learning theory, and then got involved at the University of Oklahoma in helping develop curriculum and convert stuff and working with the professors. And I just loved it. I love the pioneering stuff.
See, today we're learning a lot about you. So we're learning all those little hidden secrets. And then amidst all this, now I know you like reading everything from quirky to completely boring. You read it all. And you're a very prolific writer. You've written a lot. Are you still writing a lot?
I am. In fact, my latest things I've been trying to write in Spanish. So I've written a lot of poems in Spanish, and then I've been writing sort of flash fictions.
Yes.
And then also, I just had an article accepted that's on. I guess we call it a social novel by George Gissing. And I look at sort of abject apocalypse in the year of Jubilee. It's a 19th century Victorian novel. So I try to keep my literary criticism.
And for those of you who don't know, la doctora habla español bastante bien.
Gracias, me hace falta práctica un poco, pero me encanta y por eso me encanta Cantinflas y todo de la cultura y la literatura de de Latino America.
That's right. She said she loves Chinese food.
I do.
No,
That too.
I'm just kidding. Uh,
But I do manage to put my foot in my mouth pretty dramatically.
no, you speak pretty well. I know we've spoken Spanish before, and you do speak pretty well. You're very
It
functional.
depends. Pardon?
You're very functional in Spanish.
Yeah, I mean my grammar is good, and I just think that I get a little bit nervous, like right now, and so I don't speak as well as I could. But
Oh, you speak fine.
and I have a very large vocabulary thanks to learning by means of literature.
Okay.
But the problem is that I don't really know which centuries go with which.
Right, because the
So
problem is when you read Spanish books, all of a sudden it goes, "Vosotros vais?" And then people are going,
exactly.
huh? Yeah, I started reading Spanish in a lot of the classics. So I'm speaking to people when I was down in Argentina, and they're looking at me like, where's he from? He has sort of a Yankee accent, but he speaks very old Spanish.
I get that a lot.
It was interesting because I didn't realize that was old Spanish. It's sort of like reading old English, classical English, or classical literature, and of course, it's different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
very
interesting.
different.
Well, you and I share another thing in common. We both started out in chemical engineering too.
That's cool.
I was a chemical engineering major. I really wanted to go into aerospace, but aerospace had just laid off the majority of people in aerospace engineering. So I thought maybe that's not a good career choice. So I got into chemical, and then I left the country for 3 years, and I couldn't get into chemical engineering where I went, which was in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So I wound up in the economics school, which was different.
That's
And
so
business
amazing.
administration with a minor in IT or information systems. And then I had gotten into computers before that. In 1972 was my first programming class. It was fun. This is when we still had to do punch cards, and we had to type our programs into either a punch card, tape, or a computer, well, a printer terminal. And then you'd have these big boxes of paper just filling up with your code, and that's how you submitted things. That was called interactive.
So what
Good old
happened if
days.
you dropped your box of cards?
Oh, I've done that. I've done that. It takes a long time to put them all back in the right order. Thank God they were numbered. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've actually done that. And I've had Monroe tape punch rip on me. In the middle of a program it rips. It's like, not a
So you
good
have to
thing.
start over?
You had to do a new tape, which usually
That
meant you
means
had to
you have
kind of
to
start over. Yeah.
type the thing again?
I remember working on an old IBM System 34 and then a 38, and I had a 1,000-line COBOL program, and it took 12 hours to compile it. So it's like da, 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 da. And when it was finished, it said, "There is an error somewhere in the code." Where? There was, and I found it. It
Mystery.
took about 3 hours to find it. It was, I think it was either a colon or a comma that was missing at the end of a sentence, or a
Lovely.
semicolon. It was pleasant.
Or
That
an
was the good
endless
old days of programming.
do loop. I remember Fortran. I did Fortran.
Yeah, that was my first language. No,
Yeah.
actually, it was something else. It was like G something or other. It was some really weird language. Then I did APL. APL was, my teacher used to call it America's Perfect Language. It was actually based on the Greek alphabet, and it's used a lot by NASA, which means SpaceX might have it.
Oh, totally cool.
Yep, because it was very good at handling numbers, very complex computational math. It was very good at that. But as a language, it was interesting. It was definitely something you had to really practice at. And then I learned a little bit. Now, I would see you liking this. Forth, remember Forth and Lisp? They were the artificial intelligence languages.
I remember Lisp.
I could see you
but
learning
not-
Forth.
I can maybe. So, like, how exactly would you
Well, okay, there was a
you do it?
program years ago. It was called Eliza. Do you remember Eliza?
Yeah, I remember stories
And
about
you would
Eliza.
start out and you would say, and Eliza would say, "Hello, how are you?" And you would say, "I'm fine." "And you?" "I'm perfectly fine." "How long have you had this issue with your mother?" "I don't have an issue with my mother." "Then there must be one with your father." No." "Oh, sure, don't hide this. You have an issue. Tell me, where did that issue originate?" "Preschool?" "Preschool. How long were you in preschool?" "Just a year or two." "So you had problems in preschool." And it would just work off of everything you said. And it would kind of regurgitate it back, but in question form. It was a lot of fun. And it's all pre-programmed.
Dave,
That was
are we feeling fine?
the beginning of artificial intelligence.
Dave, how are you feeling today?
We're fine.
Dave?
Hal? Yes. Same idea. Same idea. And that's, but without the language, because back in those days, there was no voice in these computers. It was just paper just scrolling up and down. And you're talking to Eliza, Dr. Eliza. It was a project by a university, and I can't remember which one. I want to say maybe Cornell. I don't remember. It's been a long time ago. But it was an interesting beginning to artificial intelligence.
Well, I'm
And
just
now
really
all intelligence is artificial, so that's good.
yeah. Well, I mean, and I was going to ask you, in terms of training and different exciting elements about what's going on and ways to do education, I really like role playing. And I know there's all kinds of simulation, and I always
Hmm.
try to incorporate some kind of role playing, but I still think that it's underdeveloped. And I think one reason it is that it tends to be too expensive to develop, and there are easier and cheaper solutions, but nobody really seems to be publicizing those.
Right, right. And part of the problem is role playing is very good. The software that develops it is still a little sketchy. It's not as developed as it could be. We're doing some stuff with one software right now called Branch Track, which allows you to create interactions where you're having conversations with someone and you are the responder. So you're in the simulation and they
And
never
it's kind
see
of an
you.
Eliza person.
I'm sorry?
Is there kind of like an Eliza kind of prompt where it's pre-programmed and then that
Kind
person?
of. It's not artificial intelligence. You guide it. So you create the links, you create where it goes, the options. So for example, let's say you ask a question. You have four choices of where you can respond. So you're responding to, let's say, a customer. And then based on your response, it branches to correct, incorrect, not so correct. And then you can take a learner through that. It's not heuristic in terms of it learns from it, but you're creating the pathways,
So it's more or less adaptive.
kind of, except you're
Yeah.
creating the adaptation.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of short software now for grammar, et cetera. They do a lot of diagnostics, and for math, Pearson has Aplia, and it's adaptive, sort of. I mean, it's not as adaptive as it appears to be, but at least it does eliminate when you do a diagnostic, it at least eliminates where you've demonstrated competency.
Right. Yeah, so I just don't think we're there yet industry wide as far as really advanced simulations where, like let's say you have, let's look at Star Trek, the holodeck, where you're interacting with a fairly live simulation. Now that would be cool. But we're not there yet. Give it time. Now, Microsoft recently came out with the HoloLens, which allows you to create simulations, immersive simulations. And I don't know how much has been done yet in training. People are talking about it, but that could be really cool, where you're now
Definitely.
in an immersive environment, interacting with objects, with people, with other things. It's pretty cool.
Oh, definitely. Well, I
Have you
mean,
seen the
some things have
HoloLens?
to be. No.
Oh, you got to take a look at it. Go to YouTube and do some searches on holo, and I think it's HOLO because it's
Oh,
holographic.
it's like a holodeck. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the HoloLens,
like a
and that
hologram.
comes with a whole programming environment so you can create these things. I think it's $400 for the HoloLens, like glasses, and then I think the development environment may be free. I'm not sure, but it
Wow.
sounds fun. I think it would be
Yeah,
fun.
that would be incredibly fun.
Hmm. I mean, think of all the learning opportunities. Just a lot. Imagination can wander at that point.
Well, and I think that there's a big limitation, and we aren't thinking outside the box enough in terms of what we're learning how to do. See, for example, if we're living in a world that's been sort of deindustrialized, and it's a kind of world without work in the way that we used to consider
Hmm.
work, then the work we have is to keep ourselves entertained.
Right.
And so it could be through education, having libraries, through history channels, through, but most likely, generally through sports and advice. But
That's what normally happens. It's the Kardashian world.
it's true. But that produces jobs. I think this is the sad truth of it all. And it came home to me this weekend when I was in Las Vegas. I had avoided going to Las Vegas. I was really proud of myself for not having gone there. It's in the same way I was really proud of myself for having never gone to the OU Medieval Fair. And,
Hmm.
but because I was just, I don't know what I was thinking, but just no, I did not want to go. But I had a reason to go. I was visiting some friends from Mexico who are attorneys, and a really good friend of mine said, "Well, we're going there for a weekend because they have a theme of Grito, of the Mexican Independence Day in Las Vegas." So I thought, well, it'll be interesting. I like that. So I went to it, and we had a lot of fun. But it reminded me of Walt Disney and theme parks.
Interesting. Yeah. Now you hear
So
that music?
yes.
We are almost at the end of our time.
Well, anyway, so that's good because the segue is training should be in a theme park environment,
I think
and
it'd
we
be
can
fun.
simulate it with holodecks and
Can you imagine that?
holograms.
That could be so cool.
Yeah,
And I think now I think you agree with this. People learn best by doing.
they do, and I have to say I really enjoyed Las Vegas because I enjoy going into different worlds, and yet it gives you a hunger to change the worlds. So this way, we can change out our worlds really quickly.
That's true. That's true. Now Vegas is an interesting place. The only problem is every world has so much smoke that I'm just gagging and choking. So that's my
Yeah,
only negative with Vegas.
I mean, so you didn't have to actually go into the casino, so that helped.
True.
But I've never seen so many tattoos.
In Vegas?
Everybody seemed to be like totally tattooed.
Never noticed. Depends where you go.
You're like, I was just people walking on the strip and stuff. I felt that I was amazed, but I mean, it was hot. People were like showing their tattoos, revealing them.
Yeah, Vegas is an interesting place in every which way. I don't really like Vegas much. I try to avoid it as much as possible, but they do a lot of shows there, and we get stuck at some of them. So we have to do what we have to do.
I expected to hate it, and I actually had a really nice time. But I think it's because of the theme park elements and just the beautiful environments that of some of the newer casinos.
Well, the hotels
But
are cool. The
hotels are
massive
super cool.
nature of those things is mind-boggling. That's architectural beauty, the way they do those.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's a desert. There's nothing there. Pretty
Yeah,
good.
just Hoover Dam and lots of hydroelectric power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's neat. Well, Susan, next week, I know we're going to have a guest. I know we both filled in this week. But now let's wrap up one thing about Cantinflas, because we talked about it and then we kind of segued off to you. and you're more interesting. So,
No,
what was the
Cantinflas
thing
is
you
so
like
interesting.
most about him?
Oh, his sense of humor and the fact that he affirms the little guy and affirms the just the whole human nature, and then the just absolute sort of lacerillo el tormes, the trickster element, the picaresque.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love it, and he's so funny in so many different ways, and he toys with convention, toys with
Mm-hmm.
gender expectations of respectability, and he says, "Why be respectable? Enjoy yourself."
Yeah.
And it's just great.
That's good. Well,
And
we
he's
are
kind-hearted and kind-hearted and generous and
right.
affirming.
He wasn't mean-spirited in what he did. He had a good sense of
No.
humor.
So just so much warmth. I mean, just incredible human warmth.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, for all you people interested, you can go to on YouTube. There are Cantinflas movies and shorts and segments. And you said you had a DVD?
Well, I was able to watch every single Cantinflas film except for Ahí está el detalle, which I had to purchase on HD. But like you can see, or on it's a DVD, but you can watch Cantinflas in HD.
Okay.
There's a YouTube channel.
Sounds good. So that's your homework for this week. Watch some Cantinflas and report back to Dr. Susan. Susan, you have a great week. We will see you next time on
Thank you, Rick.
Edge. You're more than welcome.
Perfect.
Thank you. And we'll see you guys all next week. If you're watching the show, please subscribe, give us your feedback, there's comments, and let us know what you think. And let us know if you'd like us to interview anybody in particular. See you next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thanks.